Welcome everybody. I'm Steve Patterson, the mayor of this great city that is Athens. And want to just kind of give a gentle reminder to everybody, and that being that the land in which we're standing on is OU property. And if you remember way back when, some of you remember, a lot of you don't, there was a runway that, not here, but there was a runway, OU's airport, that ran through here. This was part of that land that OU owned. And with that, you know, as I've been mayor and kind of being hyper cognizant of our environmental environment here, our environmental efforts here in Athens, we got to work several years ago with OU to see if they would allow for the city to basically have right of entry and right of use of this land. It's about 16 acres, give or take. Some people will say it's 30. I don't think it's somewhere in between. I'll just leave it there. And with that, and working with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources and Ann Bonner years ago, and sitting in their office and kind of blue skying, if we had the ability to do whatever we wanted to in this space that we're standing on right now, what would it be? And we came up with this really cool map, recognizing first of all the different varieties, cultivar of invasives. I was going to say non-invasives. They were invasives. There was autumn olive, there was honeysuckle, there was knotweed, there was all kinds of crazy down here. And if you remember, basically from where we're standing going east, it was one of the largest Bradford pear orchards I had ever seen in my life. I don't even want to call it an orchard because now they're designated as an invasive, and they are. They're difficult to deal with. They might look beautiful in the spring, but they're not a native, and they're not something that is necessarily all that positive for a riparian area. And so we found these different zones, and where we're standing and wherever all the planting is going to go today, again, was to bring back native plants that are not only great for the environment and aesthetically pleasing because they are from here. The other thing that we got to keep and be mindful of is what was experienced this year in North Carolina, which has an elevation of 2,000 feet above sea level, and everyone goes, well, we're sitting up pretty high, other than where we're standing now, that the environment here in Athens, we're all safe. I'm going to call a big, no, we're not. I'll save my superlatives for later. We're not, you know, at the end of the day. But by planting these trees and regenerating this riparian area will certainly help. If we do have high water events, they'll help in terms of, among other things, helping suck that water back up, help to get the water table back down again, because with what we're planting with swamp oaks, we're planting sycamores here, we're planting a whole variety of natural plants in this corridor that is going to certainly help with something like that. Because let's not fool ourselves at the end of the day. It's not an if something like what hit North Carolina or hit Eastern Kentucky a couple years ago and devastated communities. And I'm not being a fear monger, I'm not. I'm just a realist at the end of the day. And it is kind of looking around, it's not an if, it's a when. And the best thing that we can all do as a community is make sure that we're doing the things that are proper for resilience. You can't stop it. Well, we can. We can sit there and bring back the single-use plastic bag ordinance again. We can do a whole bunch of things in which we know are proper for the environment, for our own environment, but we need to be resilient as we are as Appalachians, knowing that what is the right thing to do and what are the ways in which we can help mitigate or control nature as it's coming at us in a way that we've never seen before. So I want to thank all of you for coming down here. Thanks for helping out with this planting. This means a lot to not only me, but the entire community, to see all of you volunteering to do what, in my opinion, is the right thing to do in our own community. I'm going to give one last shout out, and this is all to all of you. Something that's really cool about Athens. We had a greenhouse gas inventory done in the city of Athens. and we are ranked #1 in the state when it comes to the lowest carbon emissions per capita in the state of Ohio. This is going to sound like a lot, I know. Go ahead. And it's because of you. It's because of all of you that that is the case. We're about 5 tons per capita. The state is sitting at 19.9 tons per capita, so we're #1 in the state of Ohio. Nationally, it is 20.2 tons per capita. And in my my funny way of thinking about things, we're chasing Tacoma, Washington, because they're #1 in the US. We're not that far off at the end of the day. I think they're 4.3 tons per capita. So we're getting close. We're getting close with our EV mission. We're getting close with having EV charging stations going from Athens to Dayton, Ohio, which is going to be huge for Southern Ohio. So it's not just an Athens thing, it's a Southern Ohio thing, but largely an Appalachian Ohio thing. So those types of efforts. But again, we're here talking about Arbor Day and trees, and I applaud you all for being stewards of making sure that we continue to do the right things. And I'm going to ask one request of all of you. I need you to reach out to me if you see things going in a direction that isn't necessarily sustainable or resilient for the city of Athens. Get a hold of me, because it's a collective that gets these things done. It's not me just sitting in my office dreaming things up all day long, although I do. But I need your input too. To where you see us not necessarily hitting the mark with something, let me know. We can change that. Your input is invaluable to this administration. Your input is invaluable to the city of Athens at the end of the day. All right. I'll get off my soapbox. Actually, I'll get on a different soapbox. Office of the Mayor proclamation. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for planting trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was the first observed in planting more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoils, by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, providing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increases property value, enhances economic vitality for business areas, and provide beauty to our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Steve Patterson, the mayor of this great city we call Athens, Ohio, do hereby proclaim November 2nd of 2024 as Arbor Day here in the city of Athens, and I encourage all citizens, to include all of you, to observe this day, support the efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Thank you all. Thanks for being here.
So thank you all for being here. Show of hands. I know we have a lot of students from Ohio University that showed up today. Show of hands. And how many of you brought your dads? Thank you so much. This is awesome. We have Greenleaf Landscaping here, bringing the trees and going to help us make sure that they're planted correctly so that they grow and they are strong and they can withstand the floodwaters that come through here in the springs. We have the City of Athens that also contributed this year to match some of our granting dollars to help us be able to plant this many trees. And I'm going to turn this over to Todd to do a demonstration. I will say we have a ton of volunteers here. We want to give all the care and time that each of these trees need. I know we could get done with this in probably 15 minutes because we have so many people, but we're going to do this right, and we're going to give it the care that it needs. They're going to be staked, they're going to have guards, we're going to make sure some of the supports aren't cutting into the bark of the trees. We're going to take off some of the wrappers on this and make sure it's at the right depth, and really giving a lot of care to each and every tree, because we want each one to live and survive and fill up this riparian corridor to help us protect our valuable water resource and all the benefits that Mayor Patterson just shared with us. So thank you all for being here, and we're going to turn our attention over here to Todd.
So this tree we're planting is a pin oak. Now these holes are a little bit deep, which is ideal. You want nice loose soil to plant on top of. And when you are putting a tree in the ground, you either want the root flare, where the tree actually starts to ridge out a little bit down there. You want that either even or just a little bit high. You never want to plant a tree too low. That's high potential to actually choke the tree and kill it off. I like to either have like a flat shovel or anything that you can run across your line to really get a gauge on how low you are. So just at that point, we're still, you know, a couple 2 to 3 inches too low for the tree. So we're right where we need to be here at this point. So with the potted tree, the only downside to a potted tree is you start to get this, what's called girdling root, where that it's a pot bound or root bound, where it's just wrapped around. You can see these small roots just kind of spiraled around here. You can either use a small shovel. Some people have hand pruners that you can run down the side of it, but this is pretty root bound, so I like to take a little bit of a smaller shovel to it to really break this up a little bit. Typically, I would recommend that you add some sort of compost amendment to your soil when you're planting this. I like to dig my hole, put it in a wheelbarrow, dump some compost in there, and kind of blend it up with my shovel before replanting. The upside is down here, we have really nice soil down along the river from all the flooding. So better than your typical clay that you deal with all over Athens County. You don't want to do too much of a hard pack. That way still it's tight, but water can kind of flow down around the tree when you're watering it, rainwater. You don't necessarily have to use your hands. You can step on it and kind of tamp it down with your feet as well, but you want to make sure that when you're backfilling this, that you're not piling a bunch of excess soil on the base of the tree. And even when you're mulching, you can do a nice thick layer of mulch around here, but they call it volcano mulching, where people just mound it up and really stress the tree out. So you always want to make sure that when you mulch a tree, that you're kind of pulling back away a couple inches around the actual base of the tree as well. And mulch is great for, it's not just the aesthetic value, it's the moisture retention, it's the keeping weeds at bay, and providing nutrients, compost back into the soil long term. Our next step is going to be staking the tree. Staking, you want to be in the ground for at least 1 year minimum. That allows the tree to actually spread its roots out, support itself in the end. So when you do your staking, for this size of a tree, we just need a single stake. We're going to face it west-northwest. That's prevailing winds. Now, the other thing that we need to take into account with our location is flooding as well. So we're going to have potential water that rises up through here, flowing right down this way. So it works right out because we are kind of facing the general prevailing winds, but we also want to take that into account, that when this stake is being driven back, it's going to still hold this tree, and the tree won't go down the river in the end here, which you have to have happen. So it's no, not all tree is going to have this bamboo on it. This is just kind of making sure the tree is actually growing straight up in the end. This won't actually support it from falling over or anything like that happens.
And those come off of
And-
here.
yeah. So when we're doing this, this is kind of protecting the tree a little bit from rubbing. That's the big key with this. You want to make sure that you're not having any rubbing. So when you install your tree tie, I figure eight it. That way you're providing a little bit of spacer between the actual stake and the tree here as well. This is for the deer, because right now they're loving to go around and rub their horns on trees, and if that happens, they get all the way down. They actually get to pass the bark into the cambium layer of the tree, pretty much disrupts the nutrient flow up and down the tree. You know, everything above that point is going to die. You might get some shoots that come off the bottom as like a general last survival method of the tree itself, but once that bark is peeled off around, it's pretty toast. And I like to use this 4-inch because you can wrap it around the tree. It's not tight on the tree necessarily at all, so it's not disrupting any growth. And they even use perforated, so little slots and holes in this, so there's still, again, nice airflow. You're not causing any kind of dampness or anything like that on the tree itself. And normally, even though we're still getting into dormancy, you know, the leaves have fallen off the tree, we still need to water it until we get into actual freezing weather here in the end. But other than that, that is the proper way to plant a tree.
Woo!